Vejkela adjusted her medical coat as she stepped into the brightly lit corridors of the Indomitable, the human warship she had been assigned to. The air smelled strange, too much metal, too much heat. It was nothing like the cool, sterile hospitals she was used to on her homeworld, Selva Prime. As a trained nurse in the Galactic Medical Corps, she had treated many species, Delvins with their fragile bones, Bravaxians with their multiple hearts, and even the cold-blooded Tarlus. But she had never treated humans before. She had heard stories, of course. Humans were reckless, unpredictable, and far too emotional. Their biology was strange: soft skin, brittle bones, and a dangerous mix of intelligence and foolishness. Many in the medical field considered them troublesome patients. She sighed. How hard could it be? The doors to the medbay slid open, and she stepped inside. The first thing she saw was chaos. Doctors and nurses rushed from one bed to another, medical screens blinked with urgent alerts, and the sound of voices filled the room. A fresh batch of injured soldiers had arrived. Some limped, some were carried, and some refused to sit still despite their obvious wounds. A gruff voice called out to her, "Nurse Vejkela, get over here." She turned and saw an older human male, his gray hair tied back in a loose ponytail. His uniform had bloodstains, but he didn't seem bothered. His name tag read, Dr. Collins. Vejkela hurried to his side. "Reporting for duty, doctor." "Good," he grunted. He pointed at a patient lying on the examination table. "Plasma burns. Left arm. Take care of it." She glanced at the patient, expecting someone weak and in pain. Instead, she found a human male grinning at her. His uniform was scorched, and his left arm had deep burn marks. He should be screaming in agony, but instead he laughed. "Hey, Doc, think I can still hold a beer with this hand?" Vejkela blinked in confusion. "You are joking." The human chuckled. "Of course. Gotta keep the mood light, right?" Before she could reply, Dr. Collins smacked the patient lightly on the shoulder. "Shut up and let the nurse work, Carter." Vejkela took a deep breath and focused on her task. She injected the patient with a painkiller and began treating the burns. What happened next left her stunned. The painkiller was a standard dose, enough to numb the pain for any normal species, but Carter barely reacted. His pulse remained steady. His body showed no signs of discomfort. Did the drug not work? She looked at Dr. Collins in alarm. "The anesthesia is not effective." Collins scoffed. "Oh, it's working. Humans just have high pain tolerance." Vejkela hesitated. "This is unnatural." Carter grinned again. "Nah, it's just being human." Before she could process this, another emergency arrived. A soldier with a deep gash on his side was rushed in. Blood dripped onto the floor as he pressed a hand against his wound. Vejkela expected panic, but the soldier was calm. "Doc, stitch me up quick. Captain wants me back in the field." Dr. Collins rolled his eyes. "You're not going anywhere with a hole in your side, genius." The soldier scowled but didn't argue. Vejkela watched in disbelief as the doctor sewed the wound shut, and the soldier barely flinched. What kind of species were these humans? She had treated warriors before, but none like this. They ignored pain, joked in the face of injury, and treated medical emergencies like minor inconveniences. For the first time in her career, she felt out of her depth. As the shift continued, she saw more strange human behavior. A pilot with a broken leg tried to argue that he could still fly. A technician with a concussion insisted on finishing his repairs. A group of injured Marines sat around telling jokes, despite their wounds. Vejkela finally turned to Dr. Collins. "Do humans not fear pain?" He chuckled. "Oh, we fear it. We just don't let it stop us." She didn't know what to say. In every species she had worked with, pain was a warning, a sign to stop. But humans? They treated pain like an inconvenience. Vejkela had always believed that medical training prepared her for anything. But now, surrounded by laughing, reckless, Stubborn humans. She realized something. She had a lot to learn. Veshkela had seen strange things in her medical career, but nothing compared to working with humans. Every day on the Indomitable was a new lesson in chaos. Their injuries were frequent, their recovery times were absurdly fast, and their refusal to rest was completely illogical. Her medical tablet beeped, showing a list of new patients. She sighed and made her way to the first one. The moment she stepped into the treatment room, she was greeted by loud laughter. Inside, 3 human soldiers were gathered around one of the beds. The patient, a muscular man with a deep cut on his forehead, was grinning while his friends clapped him on the back. Blood trickled down his face, but he didn't seem to care. "What happened here?" Veshkela asked, her voice sharp with confusion. One of the soldiers smirked. "Frank here challenged Lieutenant Reed to an arm wrestling match. They got a little too excited." Veshkela's eyes narrowed, and this resulted in a head injury. Frank, the injured man, shrugged. "What can I say? I leaned too far and hit the table, but I won the match." The other soldiers cheered. Veshkela pressed her fingers against her temple, feeling the start of a headache. These humans were insane. She walked over to Frank and examined his wound. "You require stitches." "No problem, Doc. Just make it quick." Veshkela prepared the medical tools, expecting him to wince as she began stitching his forehead. Instead, he continued joking with his friends, barely acknowledging the needle piercing his skin. "Does this not cause pain?" she finally asked. Frank grinned. "Of course it does, but it's not that bad." She shook her head. "Pain is pain. Why do humans act like it doesn't matter?" After finishing the stitches, she turned to the other 2 soldiers. "Are either of you injured?" One of them, a woman named Corporal Diaz, hesitated before holding up her arm. "Just a small burn. Got a little too close to a faulty engine coil." Veshkela took a closer look. The skin was blistered, a clear sign of second-degree burns. "You should have reported this earlier," she scolded. Diaz shrugged. "Didn't want to bother you. Besides, Frank needed help more." Veshkela took a slow breath. Why do humans always put others before themselves? It was admirable, but also frustrating. If they ignored their injuries, it made treatment harder. She treated Diaz's burn and sent the soldiers on their way. Before leaving, Frank gave her a wide grin. "Thanks, Nurse Veshkela. You're doing great." She blinked in surprise. Most patients didn't thank medical staff so casually. She wasn't sure how to respond. Before she could think about it, another alert sounded on her tablet. More injuries, more humans refusing to stay still. Another long day. The unbreakable spirit. Hours passed, and the med bay remained busy. Veshkela worked nonstop, tending to humans who treated injuries as inconveniences. Some even tried to help her treat other patients while still bleeding themselves. But the biggest shock came later that night. She was finishing some reports when the doors to the med bay burst open. 2 security officers rushed in, carrying an injured crew member. His uniform was torn, and a large metal shard was embedded in his side. Veshkela immediately activated the surgical drone. The injury was severe. If the shard hit an organ, it could be fatal. Dr. Collins appeared beside her, scanning the patient. "Lieutenant Harris got caught in an explosion during a maintenance check." Veshkela prepared the anesthetic. "We must operate immediately." Before she could inject the drug, a hand grabbed her wrist. It was Harris. His face was pale, but his eyes were steady. "No anesthesia," he said through gritted teeth. Veshkela stared at him. "That is not an option. The pain will be unbearable." Harris gave a weak smile. "I need to be awake. You might need my input if the metal damaged my implant." She turned to Dr. Collins, expecting him to refuse. Instead, the older doctor just sighed. "Fine, but you scream, and I'm knocking you out." Veshkela was speechless. No other species would allow this. No one would willingly endure such pain. But humans were different. She hesitated, then began the operation. Harris clenched his jaw, breathing heavily, but he did not cry out. Even when the metal shard was removed, even when she stitched the wound, he remained conscious. His body trembled, but his will remained strong. When it was over, Harris let out a shaky breath. See, not so bad. Vejkela felt something she had not expected. Respect. Humans were reckless, stubborn, and illogical. But they were also strong. She finally understood why they were feared and admired across the galaxy. It wasn't just their technology or intelligence. It was their ability to endure, to push forward, even when logic said they should stop. As Harris was moved to recovery, Vejkela looked around the medbay. The humans continued to laugh, to fight, to get injured, and to stand back up. For the first time since arriving on the Indomitable, she felt something strange. She wanted to learn more about them. And maybe, just maybe, she wanted to be a little more like them. The alarm blared across the Indomitable, its sharp tones slicing through the usual hum of the warship. Vejkela had learned that alarms meant trouble, usually in the form of more injured humans arriving in her medbay. She rushed toward the main medical chamber, where Dr. Collins was already shouting orders. "What happened?" she asked as she grabbed a medical scanner. "Explosion in the engine bay," Collins replied, his face tense. 3 wounded, 1 in critical condition. The doors hissed open, and the first patient was carried in. He was conscious, gripping his arm where a deep cut exposed metal, an advanced cybernetic limb. "I'll be fine," the man grunted. "Just need a quick fix." Vejkela scanned him and sighed. "Your organic shoulder is dislocated. You will not be fine without treatment." Before he could argue, she pressed her hands against his shoulder and forced the joint back into place. The loud pop made her wince, but the human only grunted. "Thanks, Doc." He flexed his fingers as if nothing had happened. These humans are unbelievable, she thought. But there was no time to dwell on it. The second patient arrived. Mild burns, nothing life-threatening. She quickly applied treatment before turning to the third arrival. Her stomach twisted. The last patient was a young engineer, barely in his 20s. Blood soaked his uniform, and his breathing was weak. A large piece of shrapnel was embedded in his side, dangerously close to vital organs. Vejkela grabbed Collins' arm. "He needs surgery. Now." Collins nodded, prepped the operating table. A battle against time. The medbay became a whirlwind of movement. Assistants rushed to sterilize equipment. Surgical drones hovered into position. The patient was placed on the table, his pulse faint but steady. Vejkela secured the life support systems, her hands moving quickly. She had performed countless surgeries before, but this one felt different. This was a human, and humans didn't give up. She refused to let this one die. Collins glanced at her. "You ready, nurse?" She took a deep breath. Yes. The first incision was made, exposing damaged tissue. The shrapnel was lodged deep, pressing against the liver. A wrong move could cause fatal bleeding. Vejkela steadied her hands and used the medical scanner to map the safest removal path. Collins whistled. "Smart. Most nurses just yank it out and hope for the best." She frowned. "That is not an acceptable method." "For humans, sometimes it is," Collins muttered before focusing back on the surgery. Slowly, carefully, Vejkela maneuvered the shrapnel free, watching as blood pooled around the wound. She quickly activated the clotting agent and guided the surgical drone to seal the damage. Minutes stretched into eternity. But finally, the wound was closed. She exhaled. "He will survive." Collins clapped her shoulder. "Nice work." The relief in her chest was strange but welcome. Another human who refused to die. A human recovery. Hours later, Vejkela checked on the young engineer. He was awake, blinking groggily at the ceiling. When he saw her, he gave a weak grin. "Did I miss the explosion?" She tilted her head. You were in the explosion. He chuckled. Guess that explains the pain. She stared at him. You almost died. Why are you laughing? The engineer shrugged. If I can still laugh, I figure I'm doing okay. Veshkela didn't understand it. No other species treated survival like a joke. But as she looked around the medbay, at humans trading stories about their injuries, at soldiers helping each other walk despite their wounds, she realized something. It wasn't just a joke. It was how they endured, how they pushed forward, even when the universe tried to break them. For the first time, Veshkela didn't see humans as reckless. She saw them as unstoppable. And she was starting to admire it. Veshkela had spent weeks aboard the Indomitable, yet every day brought new surprises. Humans were unlike any species she had treated before. They were fragile, yet strong, reckless, yet intelligent. They suffered, yet they smiled. Today, she was about to witness something that would change her understanding of humans forever. The stubborn patient. The medbay doors hissed open, and Veshkela turned to see who had entered. It was Lieutenant James Carter, the same soldier who had laughed through plasma burns on her first day. But today, he looked worse. His left leg was swollen, his uniform torn, and there was dried blood on his forehead. She narrowed her eyes. Lieutenant Carter, why did you not report to the medbay earlier? Carter grinned, limping toward a bed. Didn't want to miss the mission briefing. Veshkela sighed. Of course. Another human who ignored injuries. She ran a scanner over him. The results made her antennae twitch. Your leg is fractured. Carter shrugged. Yeah, I figured. She frowned. You walked here on a broken leg. Well, nobody was around to carry me, he said, as if that was a reasonable excuse. Veshkela did not know whether to admire him or scold him. Instead, she grabbed a bone stabilizer. This will repair the fracture, but you must rest afterward. Carter smirked. Rest? What's that? Her mandibles twitched in irritation. It is what keeps you alive. He chuckled. Nah, that's just a suggestion. Veshkela activated the stabilizer, watching as the device repaired the damaged bone. But she knew healing the injury was not enough. She had to make him rest. Dr. Collins, she called. Lieutenant Carter requires enforced recovery. Collins, who had been treating another patient, smirked. Oh, I have just the thing. A moment later, 2 security officers arrived. Carter blinked. Wait, what's happening? Veshkela crossed her arms. You are under medical arrest. You will remain in the medbay until I say you can leave. Carter stared at her, then burst into laughter. Medical arrest. That's a new one. Collins grinned. Welcome to the real chain of command. The security officers guided Carter to a recovery bed. He was still laughing as he lay down. Veshkela sighed. At least now he would rest. A different kind of strength. Later that day, the medbay received another visitor, Captain Alina Ward, the commanding officer of the Indomitable. Veshkela had heard much about Ward. The crew spoke of her as if she were indestructible, a force of nature. But as she entered the medbay, Veshkela saw something unexpected. Ward was exhausted. Her uniform was neat, but there were dark circles under her eyes. Her posture was strong, but there was tension in her shoulders. She moved with confidence, yet something in her expression seemed heavy. Collins noticed it too. Captain, what can we do for you? Ward hesitated. Routine checkup. Veshkela ran a scanner over her. You are suffering from extreme fatigue. Ward sighed. I'm fine. No, you are not, Veshkela said firmly. Ward's eyes met hers. My crew needs me. Veshkela hesitated. She had seen humans push through pain, but this was different. Ward's injuries were not physical, they were mental. Captain, Veshkela said carefully, your crew is strong, but even the strongest need rest. Ward exhaled slowly. We're at war, nurse. I don't have time for rest. Veshkela thought for a moment. Then she said, "You are the strongest human I have met, Captain. But strength is not just fighting. Strength is knowing when to recover, so you can keep fighting tomorrow." For a moment, there was silence. Then, to Veshkela's surprise, Ward smiled. "You're learning," the captain said. Veshkela tilted her head. "Learning what?" Ward chuckled. "How to handle humans." The captain finally sat down, allowing Veshkela to administer a mild sedative. Within minutes, Ward was asleep. Veshkela watched her for a moment. Perhaps humans were not indestructible, but their strength came from something else, something deeper. They refused to break. And that, Veshkela realized, made them truly remarkable. Veshkela had thought she was beginning to understand humans, their endurance, their stubbornness, their ability to turn pain into humor. It all made sense now. But today, she would see another side of them, a side that terrified her. A desperate plea. The medbay doors burst open, and two soldiers stumbled inside, supporting a third between them. Blood dripped onto the floor, leaving a crimson trail. "Nurse Veshkela," one of the soldiers called. "We need help." Veshkela rushed forward, scanning the injured man. It was Sergeant Davis. His body was covered in burns and shrapnel wounds, but the most dangerous injury was a plasma shot to his chest. His breathing was shallow. His pulse was weak. Dr. Collins arrived at her side. One look at Davis, and he cursed under his breath. "He's in bad shape." Veshkela was already moving. "Prepare the surgical table." The soldiers placed Davis down carefully, their hands shaking. One of them, Corporal Diaz, looked at Veshkela with desperate eyes. "Save him," she whispered. Veshkela hesitated. "We will do everything we can." It was the truth, but deep down, she knew it might not be enough. A battle against death. The surgery was brutal. The plasma wound had damaged Davis's lung. His body was shutting down, fighting to survive. Every second mattered. Veshkela worked quickly, sealing internal bleeding, repairing tissue damage, and stabilizing his vitals. But his heartbeat kept dropping. Beep, beep, beep. The monitor's rhythm was slowing. Too slow. Collins gritted his teeth. "Come on, Davis. Stay with us." Veshkela injected a stimulant, forcing Davis's heart to keep beating. But it was only temporary. His body was failing. Then something strange happened. The medbay door opened, and several soldiers entered. Some were bruised and bandaged, others completely uninjured. They stood by Davis's bedside, watching in silence. Veshkela frowned. "This is a restricted area." Corporal Diaz shook her head. "We're not leaving." Veshkela didn't understand. They were not medics. They could not help. So why were they here? Then she noticed something. Davis's heartbeat. It had stabilized. It was still weak, but it was no longer dropping. Veshkela glanced at Collins, who gave a knowing smile. "That's humans for you." Veshkela was stunned. They fought for each other, even in ways she could not explain. Even when all logic said there was no hope, they refused to let go. The cost of survival. Hours later, Davis was stable, though still unconscious. The soldiers remained by his side, refusing to leave. Veshkela studied them. "Why do you do this?" Diaz blinked. "Do what?" Veshkela gestured to the group. "Why do you stay?" "He does not know you are here. He cannot see you." Diaz frowned, as if the question itself was strange. "Because he's our friend." Another soldier spoke up. "He would do the same for us." Veshkela thought about that. Other species valued their comrades, but humans took it further. They did not just fight alongside each other. They lived for each other. They survived for each other. And sometimes, they died for each other. She looked down at Davis, his body weak but still breathing. He should not have survived. By all logic, he should have died. But humans had a way of breaking logic. Veshkela wasn't sure if she would ever understand them completely. But she knew one thing for certain. She was honored to stand beside them. The warship Indomitable was never silent for long. The hum of its engines, the distant chatter of soldiers, and the occasional alarm created a constant rhythm, a pulse of life that never faded. Veshkela had grown used to it, but tonight something felt wrong. There was tension in the air, a feeling of something unseen, waiting just beyond reach. And then the alarms blared. A crisis unfolds. Nurse Veshkela, report to the bridge immediately. The call came through her communicator, sharp and urgent. She exchanged a glance with Dr. Collins, who was already pulling on his medical kit. "What now?" he muttered. Veshkela didn't answer. She was already moving. When she reached the bridge, she found Captain Ward standing at the central console, her expression grim. A holographic display flickered in front of her, showing a damaged section of the ship. The reactor chamber. Veshkala's antennae twitched. What happened? Ward turned to her. Explosion in the reactor maintenance tunnels. 3 engineers trapped. One of them is badly wounded. Collins exhaled sharply. Great. How bad is the radiation leak? Ward hesitated. Not lethal. Yet. Veshkala's mind raced. Can we transport them out? No. Ward shook her head. Emergency shields are blocking the teleporters. Someone has to go in. Veshkala didn't hesitate. I will go. Collins grabbed her arm. Like hell you will. Veshkala frowned. You are needed here. I can. You're not immune to radiation, Kala. Collins' voice was firm. And we need both of us alive to keep treating patients. Ward cut in. Lieutenant Carter is already on his way to extract them. Veshkala blinked. Carter, but he is still injured. Collins sighed. Yeah, well, that's Carter for you. Veshkala clenched her fists. Humans and their stubbornness. The inferno below. Minutes later, Veshkala and Collins stood at the entrance of the maintenance tunnels, waiting. The walls were hot, the air thick with smoke. The ship's automated fire suppressors were working, but the damage was severe. Then, through the haze, a figure emerged. Carter. He was covered in soot, his uniform torn. He was carrying one of the injured engineers over his shoulder while dragging another behind him. Veshkala's breath caught. He should not have been walking, not with a recently healed fracture. But Carter was grinning. Told you I don't need rest. Veshkala stepped forward. Where is the 3rd engineer? Carter's smile faltered. Collins cursed. Damn it. Veshkala didn't wait. She grabbed a medical scanner and ran forward, ignoring Carter's protests. The last engineer was still inside, and she was going to get him out. A choice in the flames. Smoke filled the air as Veshkala moved deeper into the tunnels. Heat pressed against her exoskeleton, but she pushed forward. Then she saw him. The last engineer, Private Leon. He was pinned beneath a collapsed metal beam, barely conscious. His breathing was shallow. Veshkala rushed to his side and scanned his injuries. Cracked ribs, internal bleeding, severe burns. She activated her communicator. I found him. Ward's voice crackled through. Can you move him? Veshkala tried to lift the beam. It didn't budge. No, she admitted. Silence. Then Carter's voice cut in. I'm coming back in. No, Veshkala said sharply. You are already injured. Carter snorted. So? Veshkala's mandibles twitched in frustration. Why did humans always do this? But she had no choice. Fine, she said, but hurry. Minutes later, Carter appeared through the smoke, coughing. Damn, it's hot in here. Veshkala ignored him. Together, they pushed against the metal beam. It groaned but didn't move. Carter adjusted his grip. On 3, Veshkala nodded. 1, 2, 3. With a final push, the beam shifted. Veshkala pulled Lion free just as Carter staggered backward, breathing hard. The tunnel shuddered. Carter's eyes widened. "We need to go. Now." Veshkala hoisted Lion onto her back. Carter grabbed her arm to steady himself. Together, they ran. The will to survive. They'd barely made it out before the tunnel collapsed. As soon as they stumbled into the medbay, Collins and the other medics rushed forward. Lion was immediately placed on a stretcher. Carter sat on the floor, panting. "Okay, now, I need a nap." Veshkala shook her head and scanned him. "You reopened your fracture." Carter grinned. "Worth it." Veshkala studied him, then sighed. "Humans are ridiculous." Collins chuckled. "Yeah, but you love us anyway." Veshkala didn't answer. Because maybe, just maybe, he was right. The warship Indomitable was still recovering from the damage. The explosion in the reactor tunnels had been contained, but the repairs would take time. Veshkala moved through the medbay, checking on her patients. The injured engineers were stable, though still weak. Carter, as expected, had refused to stay in bed, and she had already threatened him with medical arrest again. But today, something felt different. The war had not ended. The battles were not over. And yet, Veshkala felt closer to the humans than ever before. She had seen them fight. She had seen them suffer. And now, she understood them. The unbreakable spirit. Carter was sitting on his medical bed, swinging his legs like a restless child. When he saw Veshkala approaching, he grinned. "Here to check on me again, nurse?" Veshkala crossed her arms. "You are still injured." "Yeah." Carter waved a hand. "I'll be fine." She sighed. "Why do humans do this?" Carter raised an eyebrow. "Do what?" Veshkala hesitated, then said, "You throw yourselves into danger, even when you are already hurt, even when survival is unlikely." Carter was silent for a moment. Then he chuckled. "You really don't get it, do you?" She tilted her head. "Explain." Carter leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "It's just how we are. We don't leave people behind. If we can stand, we fight. If we can crawl, we keep moving. If we can't move, we still find a way." Veshkala thought about Lion, trapped under the metal beam. About Dias and the other soldiers, standing by Davis's bedside. About Captain Ward, pushing through exhaustion for her crew. She nodded slowly. "I see." Carter smirked. "Do you, though?" Veshkala met his gaze. "Yes." Because now she did. A captain's thanks. Later that day, Captain Ward visited the medbay. She walked with her usual authority, but when she reached Veshkala, her expression softened. "Nurse," she said, "I heard what you did in the reactor tunnels." Veshkala straightened. "I was only doing my duty." Ward smiled slightly. "Your duty didn't require you to run into a burning tunnel to save Lion. That was something else." Veshkala hesitated. "It was the right thing to do." Ward nodded. "That's exactly why you belong here." Veshkala's antennae twitched. "Belong." Ward crossed her arms. "When you first arrived, I wasn't sure if you'd last. You were careful, logical, nothing like us." Veshkala frowned. "And now?" Ward's eyes gleamed. "Now, you're one of us." Veshkala blinked. She had come to this ship as an outsider, a Cenarian nurse assigned to a species she did not understand. She had watched them fight, laugh, bleed, and push themselves beyond their limits. And somehow, without realizing it, she had become part of their family. The final lesson. That night, Veshkala sat in the medbay, thinking. She had learned much about humans, their endurance, their stubbornness, their loyalty. But there was one more thing, something deeper. Hope. Humans always believed they could win, even when the odds were against them. They fought, not because they were unafraid of death, but because they refused to surrender to it. It was not just physical strength. It was a fire within them, And Veshkela knew now she had that fire too. As she looked around the medbay, at her patients, at her fellow doctors, at Carter grinning despite his injuries, she felt something new. Not just understanding, not just respect, pride. She was not just an alien nurse treating humans. She was one of them. And she would fight for them, just as they had fought for her.